Hello and welcome to This and That. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Fire. The two of us back together again.
I know. We have done the intellectual thing, and now we are going to give you all of our opinions on the 2021 World Figure Skating Championships. So if you are new here, please subscribe below and smash that like button because we are just running on fumes at this point. So it's
true.
Been a lot's happening. We got a lot to discuss, a lot of skating, a lot of things happening. Yes.
Totally. Where to begin, Dave? Where to begin?
Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. Excuses and practices, and people are going to want to talk about it. So
yeah. And a lot of angry people on Twitter about some scores. I felt some real old school skating rage coming through.
So that is a hallmark of the World Figure Skating Championships. I just have to show you. Is that
but I love the revisionist history that it's just this one, or it's recently happening, and that it wasn't happening in the 70s or in the 60s.
I do want to talk about that. That's funny because people, they get aggressive even to us. It was so funny is that, let's talk about aggression. People come at us in the comments and they get so mad. And it was so funny. Someone was saying that I know that you had Todd on so that you wouldn't have to talk about things at the Worlds. And I thought, what? What are we not talking about? I don't know. There's a lot of projection. And I literally thought, okay, so for the Worlds in 2019, which was 2 years ago, we had 4 different recap shows, and that's what we did. And we talked about the Worlds. So I thought that was a great success. People
and you've been hearing our opinions about these programs and these skaters and a lot of things all season. So it's fun to get former world champions and coaches and choreographers to come in and sort of add some spice to it.
It's funny because when we read the comments,
and we do,
well, who are these gay men anyway talking about these young skaters and awful with this, and like you read that, so you're like, okay, we'll bring in an expert for each discipline and make everyone happy. Oh no, I just want your opinion. Well, okay, so we're doing both. It's fine. It is all good. Okay. It's funny.
And they're important representations of different factions of the sport. So this is now out of fandom. This is right to the coach, right to the skating champion of the past, right to a choreographer. And they really give you insight. And you may not like what that coach has to say, but that coach represents a major faction of figure skating culture, whether or not you like it or not. It can provide some insight as to what's happening that confuses you.
And you know what? I think it's a good reference point. It's good for people to discuss and they're not going to like everything that someone says. And that's why we did it. You know, when we had Alex on 5 years ago, people loved Alex Sarashев and thought he was a breath of fresh air. I think society has changed so much now. Maybe it was 6 years ago. You know, now he said some things and people react differently to things.
But again, he represents a major portion of judges and coaches and choreographers that still exist and think the exact same way.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I tried to save him during the Karen music comment and he said it.
I know, we all did.
And, I didn't agree, but it was, and I thought, oh man, of all times to say it, right? Such a movement happening, timing, not that thing, but with all due respect to Alex, I think the funniest thing is that he really does love John Curry. And yet usually coaches coach skaters that are like they are, right? That are similar, right? Like Elaine Zayak made Jimmy Ma and he was all jumps and, and aggressive. And Alex has some of the most physically demanding skaters. Like so Alex teaches an off-ice class where people are doing like handstand walks, walking down into like off-ice axles and planks, and like he'll make a man out of you. And so much so that the first thing that Frank did when the Gold Sisters were there was to try to make them less muscular and more fit in a certain way. And that made Gracie's jump smaller. And there was a lot of discussion about that for years. But it's just funny is that he is one of the people who I don't really think coaches along. He was a very artistic skater who was a mess. And maybe that is why he coaches in a complete opposite way. I don't know, but that's kind of one of the fascinating things about him. So
well, and he was probably then never taught the thing that he had naturally. He was taught the thing he struggled with. So then that's easy to be the thing then you teach in return instead, you know, but
I mean,
crazy.
he is a jump master and a technician, but I also knew as soon as he said that, well, how many ladies get better in their 20s? I'm like, okay, people are going to make lists and they are going to not like that comment. I think he was speaking globally and not in specific. Yes, there are always good exceptions and people should move away. But I thought when he was saying that, I was like, oh, okay, we're going there. All right.
Here we go. We go. It was interesting for me because we had a great deal of Russian presence in this recap, you know, with Elena and with Alex and all this sort of stuff. How much they loved Nathan Chen, because according to Twitter universe, of course, I only pass by either people just liking anyone who's American because they're from the US, which I know you and I both think is so boring, or it was all these Hanyu fans that felt the only way to bolster Hanyu is to tear down Nathan. Yeah. And so I'm left thinking nobody likes Nathan except, you know, Americans being patriotic, and that's it. And then to find out that all of the sort of Russian skaters and skating community really root for Nathan. It was sort of a fascinating discovery for me.
He is their favorite alien. He is Tatiana Tarastova's favorite alien. Galina Zmievskaya said he's from another planet. And I mean, even a year ago, Victor said, well, obviously Nathan Chen is the best, you know, and like, they're just that, you know, I think it goes, so it's funny because Galina and I got in a debate where I'm like, well, I really love Kolyada. Because we were talking about jump landings, and I'm like, well, I love the way Kolyada lands his jumps. And she was like, yes, he's very wonderful. Who cares? Nathan Chen giving you quad lats, you know? And I was like, okay. So they are like, show me the quad lats.
Kolyada, and they represent a great deal amount of judges, you know?
Yeah. So I think Kolyada he actually does have a stunning quad lats. He just hasn't put it out like Nathan does. And that's a big deal. Look. Yeah. Nathan has done that quad lats time and time again. Nathan was fantastic here. Do I think that his people are going to want to go into the component scores? Do I think the component scores were too high? Yeah. And this happens at every world championships I've ever watched for the last 20 years.
And every skater we've talked to, skaters, world champions that we talk to, all say, yeah, but when you do that content, how is the performance not amazing? How are the skating skills not amazing? And of course, I'm looking for sensitive. I'm looking for heartbreakingly beautiful, but they are right. And I remember you made a really good point about Megan and Eric at Boston Worlds. You're like, when a team that strong and that powerful delivers a clean program, there is something artistic about it.
Yes.
Even if it's not artistic, you know?
Well, I think technique, you can't have artistry without technique, and you can't have technique without artistry, as they say. That's true. Yeah. It sounds like a really pretentious statement, but there's a lot of truth to it. What I noticed with Nathan is that he has a formula for his free skate, especially the last 2 seasons. I don't know that he's going to change it before the Olympics, but since since they've changed from 8 jumping passes to 7, he does hold it in and have more of a jump drill, and then he lets it out at the end. It reminds me a little bit of Michelle Kwan with Scheherazade and towards later in her career.
But Tosca.
Tosca had more presence in the middle of it, but yes, right? Like that big end is on brand for what Nathan is doing. This reminded me of the Elton John program, but he did it with Philip Glass music. I liked it more here. I didn't love it in terms of artistically, but as a performance and as an overall exercise, it was absolutely fantastic. And obviously he did skate very, very well to be able to do it. But I will say that I think when people talk about Nathan's marks, that they're wanting to say that Nathan's components were higher in a way that's unfair to Hanyu. And when I look at it, I think that they both are often I think that they're both more similar than different.
And-
yes, I think that Hanyu has more knee bend and more skating skills than Nathan, but there are also times that he gets sloppy in the performance execution, especially when he goes like this with the posture. That's just my perspective, right? But I think that there are others that are giving more in the program, but then they're not doing the same technical content, which is koyada, which is why I feel, and we talked a little bit about this with Todd, and someone went off on me, and someone was saying that people get very upset when they talk about
very triggered
in a way, in a nasty way, like coming. And I try to reply to the comments to build community and be respectful and things like that. This sport was 50-50 technique and artistry in free skating for a century, right? For long, right? It was technique and artistry. Yes, but they're like, well, even if it was 60-60, the technical always influenced the artistic. Yes, but when and that has changed and been something that's always debated over time, but that's part of the fun of it. However, but it's always been a sport. It was not all of a sudden it became a sport because we have the IJS and now we have this lopsided technical thing. There are times that I think that the sport is really nuanced and developed, but I do think it has had an inappropriate ranking over the last couple of years. And I think that it was like, well, there are still great programs. And I agree, but maybe they're not rewarded as appropriately.
Exactly.
You know, because if you want, I think the components need to be judged better. And I think that goes for Nathan, for Hanyu, for but there are just things, right? That's a constant refresh, a constant like continuing learning education thing.
But as Alex rightly pointed out, and even Joe Inman used to point out when he would come on the show, if you actually judged it correctly, you're going to stand out and be penalized because you're the only one doing it. It would have to be a big mass move towards judging PCS with variations. So someone has high skating skills, someone has low performance, someone has high something else. But if you're the one that does it, you look out of line and you're the one in trouble.
Well, judges have traditionally, if you read John Jackson's book or you studied skating, they do advance in terms of like a group thinking, because when you're judged in terms of trial judging, you don't want to be wrong, right? You want to be within that corridor. However, when you get to the World Championships, you are allowed to give a variety of marks, but you are sure as heck going to have to justify them at a meeting the next day. Now, I think that you could be a bold person and do very well at a meeting. And Vanessa Riley used to be that person in the 6-0 system. And I believe that she would still judge the same way today, right? If she were on the panel. Many people were not. And it's a subjective sport. It can breed insecurity. It could also breed strong opinions. But I'm fine with someone that wants to stand for good skating as long as it's not nationalistic, right? Like as long as
yes.
And unfortunately, look, if you are the US judge, they may not send you if you are going to be that judge who's going to go over the map if they don't have if you're going to be the artistic components difficult person and you're going to give Johnny Weir a 3.75, you may not choose to send Joe Inman the next year, right? So they learn to play these games, and that's tough. And also then you think, well, is it the American judge's job or not to support the American skater? And that's
I think it should not be.
And I would agree with that. However, if every other judge is supporting their skater and you're trying to have integrity and someone else is not trying to have integrity, you look like the bad guy because it's twisted. It's not that you're standing for something. As a judge, they twist it and say that you're not supporting your own guy. And that is when we share a Instagram video of 4 or 5 different short program combinations. And Corey 8 is texting you and saying that you're anti-American because one of the 5 skaters was American in there. And you're like, no, I was just talking about all of the calls that they were inappropriate, that skating protocol did and I shared. And then
As a fan, I love it
an
being
ungrateful
foreigners.
American, right?
Right.
So these are the kinds of things that happen in the sport. And this is why things start to get covered in certain ways and why people don't want to say anything, because it is a sport where people will come back at you very, very strongly. And you have to be ready to do that. And you will lose friends, and yes. So
well, I mean, there was even that interview I was reading with Julien, where he was convinced that Vicky and Nikki, as we will now forever call them, were only able to win because Nathan Chen came back in the long. Because if Nathan had been denied a win, they would have taken it out on the Russian ice dance team.
So this is interesting because the Russians had a lot of coverage like that.
Yeah, it rode all the way down. Stepanova Bukin, this, that, you know, Mishin's wife was saying everybody underscores the Russians.
Everyone's underscoring the Russian ladies who swept and have been on top for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the way I took that is, people who think that way, judge that way.
Bingo. Yeah. Yeah.
And what I mean by that is,
and probably experienced, like Julien probably experienced a great deal of that. We talk about 94.
I did a great deep dive. I'm not calling my own thing great. It was a great article that Yelena Vaitsekhovskaya wrote that I love to revisit, about Russian politics nationally and internationally. And it's in that Tears on Ice book, which I read a selection of. And it's one of the greatest articles about skating I have ever read. And it has to do with Krylova and Fedorov versus Kusterova's daughter and Oleg Ovsyannikov, who coach Tiffany and Jonathan. And their coach, the daughter, who originally skated with Oleg Ovsyannikov, they completely, Tanya Harding, that team at the knees, at the direction of Alla Shcherbakova, who is the wife of Valentin Paseyev, the head of the federation, had a meeting and said, if you vote for the other team, your career as a judge is over. And then Oleg gets slick to it, moves to Linichuk, eventually replaces Vladimir and skates with Angelika Krylova. Just like a good history lesson, because these are the same people still involved. So I thought that and they also talk about how when Yelena didn't want to just cover things one way, they weren't going to invite her. And you could even see from the media perspective, because that happens at the USFS, that happens other places where people want you to just to say certain things or judge certain ways. And it is a discussion that's happened, but it's happened forever. And I think that that's what people are saying.
But this is back when we talked to Linda about the trading, because Robin won and then da. So she was, I mean, it's literally been forever. So the idea that it's new or system based only on IJS versus 6.0, I mean, come on. Could you imagine the shenanigans going on now if we still had figures? It'd be the same stuff.
I think this stuff still happens today. We just are not always as slick to it. But when I was looking, you know, Hanyu had a lot of mistakes in his free skate. But I also had a big debate with someone about Sui and Han. I honestly feel, if you asked me in the middle of the night about Sui and Han at Worlds, I believe that they should not have gone.
Okay.
Like Papadakis and Cizeron didn't go. Because I don't think that they were healthy. She had a broken foot. Have they been the most beloved, the most beautiful, the most inspiring team of a generation? 100%.
And do I still, even in the 25th time we've seen that program, do I still melt when I see it? You bet. Do I think that my love for them transcends a couple of under-rotated jumps? You bet. Do I think that this really hurt them going into Beijing? You bet.
Do I think it hurt them going into Beijing? It elevated another team, right, with that situation. What I feel with Sui and Han, it dented them, for sure. And they obviously appear beatable, although it could also motivate them. So I look at it in both ways. However, it definitely gave them an equal, like it made another team equal. I believe that Mishin and Galyamov were the best team of the season.
On the night, yeah.
On the night and of the season.
Yeah.
I think they had the program. Judging components the way you want to judge, if you're judging, I still think they would come out ahead. Listen, they did a whole other set of triples. And Sui did not rotate a single triple jump.
And you became nervous. You became nervous for her during that performance, which detracts from the gorgeous choreography, of course.
And even though they have stunning skating skills, they were slower here. They were not as crisp. One, they had a lack of training time, and then with the mistakes, it pulled back further. So they didn't have the magic or the speed. So even though I think that they are the greatest pair team in so many ways, they weren't here. And this is a thing where it's like, okay, fans want to hold them up. Fans want to protect Yuzuru Hanyu, or at least have it be close. But if you're looking at it as a sport and as athletic competition, you know, this is not the Oscars, right?
Right.
This is on the night, or it's supposed to be on the night, and I don't think that they did it on the night. And is the other team as refined? No. Is the other team as, you know, they give the same unison or the same posture or the same magic? No, but they do have a lot of really great qualities and a lot of power. And, you know, Anastasia Nishina has a beautiful free leg, and they have excitement, and they have that Moskvina magic and the interesting transitions. And
that we've not seen in a while. You know, we've been saturated with other pairs teams and their styles, but it's been a while since we've seen that sort of Moskvina touch in so many top teams, and it's really nice. But also to your point, like, with the Hanyu short program, they were all upset about PCS for Hanyu. It wasn't high enough in the short program. And again, we're talking about like one additional point, which of course in the end would have made zero difference whatsoever. But you're doing
but it could if they're close, which I understand, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you're doing
this, because it didn't matter, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. And you're doing a disservice to their former program scores if you want the same score awarded for this performance. Sui and Han's previous amazing performances would no longer seem as special if you gave this performance the same score.
I agree. The thing with Yuzu is there are certain things he does so well, and he has had some programs that have just knocked it out of the park. His Olympic short program in 2014, which is the season before, the Chopin, the even Otinal. Those are his strongest skating. I don't feel that his Prince program or his Let Me Entertain You program, I think that they were fun, but I don't think that they were winning, right? Yeah. But I do think that they serve a purpose. So because they, like Jason Brown going against type in his free skate, allow a reset. Again, we miss his old style. He then can redo the, you know, if he chooses to go in that direction. Someone was saying he should do Moonlight Sonata. If he did Moonlight Sonata, that would be in that other brand. He'd skate with the big gravitas. He'd do the big inside spread eagle with the arms, and we'd give him all the points in the world because now we're not sick of it.
Right.
I just don't think that this program was as special. I think it's fun. You may like it as your best program, but I think if I'm evaluating a piece of work,
right,
I'm not as likely to give it a 10. I might go 9.25. And that adds up over time. And that's why I think you see like a 106 instead of a 110 and things like that. I don't think that this was a winning performance. He wanted to have fun and maybe he enjoyed it. And I think, yes, maybe for him personally, it was good, but for a competitive vehicle, maybe not. I don't think he takes a lot of stylistic risks. I think he has a few genres that he does. And he's not as versatile as a Daisuke Takahashi. So, you know, Daisuke Takahashi gave you a tango. He then gave you, you know,
the blues, and then he gives you Beatles even, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, he's giving you Pagliacci. You know, he's going across genres. Hanyu doesn't do that, and he's really fantastic at what he does. But a lot of his programs, to me, rely on the technical and music that boosts it, but that it's not a work that stems from the choreography. And neither is Nathan's. They both have this. Nathan has found a style where he works around with the big step sequence at the end. And right now the judges are responding to it. Megan Duhamel also had a great point about his program composition. And I do think that that was something that was overscored here, just watching it and watching how he can flip in and out. At the end of the day, did his components get higher? Yes. Instead of a 40-point lead in the free, maybe he gets a 35-point lead. At the end of the day, he's winning by 35 points, right? Now, Yuzuru did not skate his best. And then people say, well, he had this and he had that and he had that. And I think whatever problems that he did have, we didn't see. I feel for him to have any person. I also think that there are so many skaters, and I think that his fans focus on him and his asthma attack and the fact that there was an earthquake and that's his situation. We don't know Nathan's situation. We also, Keegan Messing had a brother who passed away, and he's in Alaska where he's like maybe the only high level skater and rings, there are so many different challenges that people have. And I think that, I don't want to say that like Yuzuru didn't have them, because I think Yuzuru did have them, right? I think that it also,
they're still going to call it the way they see it in the moment, regardless of all that. Yeah.
Yes. And that's what happens, unfortunately, in sport, right? So I don't know. In terms of that,
that's why amidst all that, and with the ladies, I'm here for some silver medal reactions, like between Elisabetta in the Kiss and Cry and Yuma in the Kiss and Cry, when they both thought they were just going to maybe eke out a bronze, and then to find out that they were silver. Those were some much needed feel-good skating moments. Whether or not I love Elisabetta's programs or not, there were some of these backstories that actually helped me enjoy it even more.
Oh, the only thing I was going to say is that I've talked about this before, and I feel like, I know not everyone watches every episode, so people do. I'm more convinced than ever after these worlds that I think it's time for the components to be recalibrated. In addition, for them to be judged more stringently. And I think that the men should be about at a 1.1 for the short, and a 2.2 for the free, and that the ladies should be 1.0 and 2.0. Unless maybe the men should be 1.2 and 2.4, and we have skatingscores.com who could recalibrate that and say how this would have impacted it or not impacted at all. But I don't think that giving more points for artistry should diminish someone's technique, right?
Exactly. And I like that conversation with Todd. Don't limit people like they kind of did with pairs.
Oh, they absolutely did it in pairs because the Russians weren't good at the throws.
I know.
That's how Kurnik got that pushed through. Okay, okay. That was not meant to help Sui and Han. Let's be honest about that. Okay.
Exactly.
Which country couldn't get the throws and didn't want another Duhamel Radford situation coming up? But if we look at this, I do think that emphasizing technique, it would help a skater like Koyeda. It's going to help a Shoma Uno. It could also help Jason Brown. And I think that those are three skaters that really excel and should be rewarded for what they're able to do in those areas. However, it has to be judged accurately, because then the people are like, well, it's a sport. Yeah, and it's also an art, and it's had this same debate for all of these decades. So you telling me that isn't true, I don't, like, that's just, you're wrong. It's called artistic skating in several countries. You may not like it, but it is. Different.
It can be both. And these men are proving. I mean, obviously, I know Jason obviously just tried his under rotated Sao, but in general, all of these guys are bringing us both. And again, I was so thankful for it, because in some other disciplines that left me definitely wanting something different, that was at least a discipline that really just delivered for me.
The men's event was the event of the World Championship.
Oh my gosh, and a great one. Pandemic aside.
And the performances, right? I think, and it was good that a lot of different countries had people in. I think it was good for the sport in a lot of ways. I've been very worried about what would happen to skating in Japan after Yuzu and Shoma retire, right? Is that going to be a situation like in the US when Michelle and Sasha retire, especially with the Russians winning so much. Ari Zakarian had that article lately where he's like, well, if Russia keeps winning everything, that's not good for the sport.
Right.
Yes, it's good for Russia, but it's not good for it's not good for the sport as a whole. And I looked and I thought about like, what's going to happen? The fact that Yuma Kageyama arrived ahead of schedule, a skater that we, overlooked.
We've always loved, yeah.
Always loved, but we overlooked him in our preview. He arrived, and he may be the next huge star of Japanese skating. And he arrived, I think, a little bit ahead of schedule, if you look at that. So.
And what does Sandra always say? That the Olympics favors the naive. And enter someone like Yuma.
I think he's got a great chance.
Yeah.
I think Yuzuru, Hanyu, Nathan's not in as easy of a position as everyone paints it out to be. From a scoring perspective, sure, the judges love him, the judges respect him, and when he skates well, they're willing to give him the points. I think from a mentality point of view, you're now this many points ahead. You have so much pressure now because you haven't lost in 3 years. And okay, you start to get into how hard do you push? How hard do you pull back? How do you make sure that you're healthy and peaked and then not giving too much? I don't think that someone's going to add enough quads to maybe go neck and neck, but at the same point, 1 or 2 mistakes is also something that could, ice is slippery. He did have mistakes before. And there were a lot of factors that people didn't know what affected him going into the last Olympics. I'll remember so well that he was in a commercial right before he bombed that short program in the team event. You were watching it on the feed and you think, okay, he gave 1,000,001 interviews about how great he is and the pressure and everything. And well, he has to sit with that for the next 11 months.
Right.
And sit with his mistake from before. And that could motivate him, but that could also, I don't think his performance here is going to do anything to ease the pressure on him.
Right.
Had he lost these worlds, it would anger him, but I think it would release this, you've been undefeated. Now he's handled being undefeated pretty well, but
his mental game seems strong because there's just something very casual about his whole approach that makes me feel he kind of is defined in himself a little bit. So he's kind of making his choice in the same way when Raf gives these sometimes eye-rolly interviews about it, but he's like, we know what we're doing. We got this. And I believe them. I think they have a plan and they believe in it. But it was also interesting to hear Todd talk about how someone like Mishin can be a master of the big picture plan. And so I don't know how much experience Raf really had then going into something like Pyeongchang with this kind of pressure, with this kind of situation. But I think now he does.
I mean, Raphael's never had an Olympic champion. That is a huge thing that I'm sure he would love to accomplish and has a great, great chance to accomplish. So I think they're on track, right? What I'm saying is it's not easy, right? Like I think fans and everyone acts like, oh, Nathan, he just needs to coast. And it's like, that is so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
But I do notice he's very respectful. He's very differential to Yuzu when he doesn't necessarily have to be, right? At this point. He is, and I think he's a lot of class. And I also think someone pointed out, well, he's not saying that he's the best because he still mentally acts like he's chasing Yuzu. He will let Yuzu be here so that he is always striving, and it's a way of reducing pressure. That
makes total sense. Yeah.
So interesting. Yuzu, it does sound like he's resigned himself, that he feels he can't win. And I think that that's depressing. It reminds me of Patrick Chan before the last Olympics.
Right.
He is pivoting to this quad axel talk. we didn't see him attempt it in practice here, even though he was saying he was doing it until days before. I would love to see him attempt it. Do I think it's gonna happen? I don't know. I mean, I think he's gonna give it everything. If he feels he cannot win the Olympics, I think he will try to make a statement in one way or another. Whether it's in the quad axel, leading Team Japan to a medal or something. Like, I think he's going to give everything he has and be incredible in one way or another. But can you see, what do you think he's going to, like, do you think he's going to add the quad lutz in again? Like,
I can't imagine. And this is also part of not having access to him in the same way we have access to other people that give so many English language interviews, for instance. And people have always said he gives great interviews, that he's very well-spoken and very respectful and stuff, but I can't necessarily get a vibe for the personality or really how much he is taking the advice of people in Toronto. And I don't know, if you're Brian Orser, do you think you can still do it? Do you think that through quality alone, you can still achieve this? Because I don't know. I'd be curious what the people around him are sort of feeling. Like, you know, a Ghislain and...
I mean, I think the reality of the situation is he has to skate perfectly and rely on Nathan to make errors. Many people have won the Olympics doing that.
Right.
But how do you find the motivation accepting defeat ahead of time?
Right.
And in this point system, when things as they are, but people get injured, ice is slippery, people make mistakes, things happen. But if he could at least add the quad lutz in, it would get him closer. But can he do it consistently? And can he do it?
Now you have to remind me of this rule because it confuses me. He can't do 2 toes, 2 sows, and 2 loops.
No.
Which is such an odd rule to me. It's because you can only repeat 2 of the same quad.
Yeah, it's the Elaine Zayak rule. So it's...
Yeah, but it's so funny, like as I interpreted the Elaine Zayak rule, it's like, okay, you can't do 5 quad toes. But to me, if you could do 2 of 3 different jumps, it seems silly to me that wouldn't be allowed. Because if he could add in another quad loop, for instance, I think suddenly we're talking.
Add in another quad loop to get a couple points back, right? And his quad loop, when he does it, is stunning. It's not as consistent as his sow or his toe. So that's the risk.
Yeah.
And I saw his performance. He went for the quad loop, had a mistake. He even mentioned like the next small mistake. And then, you know, the program got away from him. In 2019, it was more of an apples to apples where they both skated so well.
Mm-hmm.
This time, they didn't skate well. So yes, there is like a 40-point difference, but you're also seeing mistakes. So if you're going to try to see how many points he would have to add, if you're his coach, and what would we do, and what could we add, you have to kind of look at like, well, if he skated well, what would he have gotten? And then
Exactly. With like the GOEs that are better than Nathan's sort of ride out and stuff, even though Nathan, I don't know how he does it. He selectively gets better landings by the time the worlds come around.
That's peaking, that's confidence, that's...
But you know, Hanyu has more complex transitions in and out. And Hanyu does have nice ride outs and GOE moments if he does it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that you raise a really good point. Like, you'd have to go down and be like, if he had nailed perfectly here, how do those compare?
I don't think that it's over. Over.
Yeah.
I think we're down. We're in the locker room and we are down. And that is a fact of life, right?
Yeah.
Like Michael Jordan is down. What is he gonna do? Right? And I don't know. I think his quad loop is so stunning.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a way, if he wants any hope of being competitive, he has to add a harder quad. I don't think his Lutz is the jump to get it. I think his quad loop is close enough that if he really worked with Ghislaine, he could get consistent enough. But then here's the next little wrench in the plan, is that he indicated that he may not be able to go back to Toronto because the situation in Canada is that if you go there, you have to quarantine for at least 2 weeks, and you may not, as other skaters have had issues with, be able to get into Canada if you're going from Japan. Right. It happened to Satoko after the Japanese nationals. Okay, so if you're Hanyu, you're thinking like, it's probably not worth it for me to go, and maybe it's not worth it to go and sit those 2 weeks out, especially if I'm not guaranteed. And let's be honest, they can fly Ghislaine in, and the Japanese Skating Federation is always offering him money to help Mia Hamada's team. So you think, okay, that's an option, right? Like if Ghislaine goes to Japan for 6 months, a year, that might be a better option. And then consult with Brian and Tracy over Zoom. I think that's better than working himself, especially if this quad, I think if this quad axle is a realistic thing, he needs a coach there to work with him in person and not
for safety alone. I mean, oh my goodness.
Yes, a million things, because he does seem like someone, although he doesn't train the number of hours that other people do, he does train very intensely. In the time that he does, it maximizes it. So he has like his own system that's kept his body fresh for years. So, and Michelle Kwan was similar later in her career, and Jason Brown also is. But yeah, I'm curious what's going to happen there.
And I'm curious, I know this is such like a side story to all these incredible performances we watched, but I am curious what happens with Vincent moving forward. Because that was something we sort of glossed over with Todd, but like this was a disaster.
Yes.
And I don't know. And quite frankly, I kept
trying. So let's talk
to...
about it, because listen, the last 2 Olympic teams have been decided by selection committees.
Right. Which I always think is appropriate. Of course they should be, in my opinion.
People will debate this until the end of time. We have friends, I have friends like feel upset. Following gymnastics, I'm just so used to it that I'm so desensitized.
You're choosing the best team. You can't, I mean, especially now that there's a team event.
It's completely, okay. So moving ahead and not having read, okay, so you have the official and the unofficial selection procedure. You have the events that are considered and then the events that maybe aren't on paper but are written down. If you're looking at the worlds and you have Jason Brown, who is 7th in the world, I don't think you're going to get, obviously Nathan has a spot on the team.
Good choice.
Good choice. Nathan with one leg has a spot on the team, by the way.
Exactly. I love his flamingo program. No, I'm just
the same way Michelle Kwan got to go in 2006 without competing. Nathan has earned that right, so he is going.
Right.
Jason, to me, I don't see 2 guys that could knock him off at this point in time.
No, I don't.
Because even though he was 3rd at the Nationals and 7th here, he's skated. He's also an engaging performer. He's someone that people want to watch. He's someone that the audience loves, the commentators love.
The judges love when they can help him enough.
And he's happy, and he can give the interview on the morning show, and he's consistent. And if Nathan wants to do one program in the team event, you can plug Jason in, and it's likely not going to change the outcome of the US's silver medal. Right. So I think it's
kind of, in this way, it is like the Oscars. When something like the team event is almost just inevitably predetermined in some ways, how lovely to say, Jason, here you go. Thank you for all you've done for US skating. Here's a silver medal.
But he's also improved over the last 4 years. The thing here with Jason, watching this season that he didn't get to compete in the Grand Prix, didn't help him. I think he's made up for it in the fact that he put out a quad at the Worlds. It was not rotated, but the fact that he did it and didn't pop and went for it, didn't fall, huge. However, it took him all year to get to this point, and took him all last year to get to this point. He needs to get ready sooner, but still be healthy. And then I don't think the 2 quads in the free are realistic for him.
No.
Just given what it took for him to do this, right? They were talking about switching between the toe and the sow and the toe and the sow and the toe and the sow for the last like 6 years of his career. Pick one.
Right.
We were even hearing in the run-throughs that, you know, they were switching it in and out and which one is better. One is more rotated, but one is more likely not to pop it. And I think they need to pick one and put it out every time so he can just get really comfortable with doing it.
Yeah.
Then, because he does know that he's gonna, people ask about why doesn't he have a quad, and that's a rude thing to hand. And you know, he's a better skater than doesn't deserve someone to always like, you know, dig. But he did not do triples here in the free after he did the quad. And I think for him, it's going to be putting out. Now he also has an up-tempo program this year, and it is harder for him to give all that energy on the footwork and the transitions, and we're doing
the entrance to the camel spin. Oh my God. Yeah.
And I think they're smart, is that the rumors is that he's going back to Schindler's List next year. And I think that that would be a wise decision in terms of pacing and getting in the triples and doing it. And I think it's a more natural fit for him. So if that is the case, I think that that would be strategically sound for him.
And with all these talks about the other US men, there's Vincent, and is Todd's student's name Yarrow?
Yarrow, yeah, Yaroslav.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Then, but when people start throwing around Tomoki and like all these other names, I was like, these are names that have not, in my opinion, proven anything even beyond Vincent.
I mean, they're the Ross Minor situation. Although Ross was established, he had not delivered an international competition before. And these boys are in the same.
Yeah, I would trust them no more than I would trust Vincent, except for maybe Yarrow.
Tomoki has
flips
and delivered, but Tomoki has shown that he doesn't skate well during the fall. He takes all season to get together. And for an Olympic selection, that's not enough.
I'd send Vincent over Tomoki.
Yes.
Yeah.
Vincent's a tough one because he tends to skate well at nationals. He has a personality that always doesn't come across well in interviews. He was skating well here in practice, and then the ankle thing came out. And Boyang Jin skated poorly, and the Chinese Federation is apparently really upset with how the Chinese team did here. They wanted the pair to win, and they wanted him to do well, and they're spending all of this money, and they have a home Olympics with a lot of pressure. I mean, that's
yeah. And with a lot of great skaters who may or may not be just a season or two past their prime.
So then, what do you do, right? Like, what do you? To me, if he had said nothing and just had a really bad skate, it's almost the injury thing. Actually, I read it, and the way it was worded and he loves to go into detail in these posts.
And Paris girls, they
imagine if you got in an argument with him.
Who has the time? Yeah.
Still texting.
Yeah, exactly. It's still the dots. Yeah.
The fact that he brought up that he had to fly out of state and do all of this, that to me, it was like, wait a second. Well, then where was the alternate? Did US Figure Skating know? Did they send him? Did they send him because they think he's the best bet for 3 spots? But that to me raised questions.
You didn't know that Nathan was going to be able to win, or that Jason was going to be able to do that well. Like, this could have been a real problem. Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm not surprised that the US men, were in the position they were for 3 spots. So they do have to go to Nebelhorn because the rules are now such that you have to confirm the spot if it's a situation where if it's like 2 people get 3 spots, and in this situation he didn't make the free, and yada yada yada. And so to me, it makes Nebelhorn so much more interesting, and it makes this
No
whole
kidding,
discussion
yeah.
so much more interesting. But Yarrow has not been the most consistent skater, and that's why Todd was like, we need these summer events, because he wants to get him out there and he wants him to prove that he can be consistent.
Because that nationals was a sensation, what he was able to churn out there. Yeah.
But it had never, I mean, if you go back and rewatch some Yarrow performances.
Which was pre-Todd.
But
right?
Todd is a great coach at the training.
Yeah.
And he had all of that technique from Slava Zagronyuk, the former skater of Galina Zmievskaya, and Valentin Nikolaev, who was, yes. When he went 1-2 with Victor at Europeans in '94, yes. So former world junior champion. Yeah, it's an interesting situation there.
Yeah.
It makes it very interesting going into nationals, though I don't know if this year is his time, but it could be his time the next year after, the post-Olympics, who's going. And he's someone with a lot of talent. Also, it's really time for Camden and Tomoki and Torgashev and Jimmy Ma and Chris Nojan to really get consistent. And
I think it's too late. I think the reputation was so solidified that I find it would take some spectacular pulling out of all the stops next season every time they competed.
My inner Marta Caroli agrees with you. My inner Marta Caroli is like,
They've already, yeah.
Consistency.
Time and time again, after opportunity. So it's pretty tough that way.
Time and time again, Vincent has problems with the rotations of his jobs.
But even with those problems, to have a bronze medal at the Worlds or to be 6th at the Olympics, he proves much more reliable than someone like the guys you just mentioned.
It is going to be really hard for Vincent not to make the Olympic team.
Yeah, unless Yarrow just crushes it all season.
But that's will he get
it's a big ask.
And will he get the Grand Prix? And will there be events next season? And how much? And does he benefit more if there aren't international events and we have like Skate America with the stars in Vegas and the cardboard cutout? Like, does that benefit him more? Right. But it's going to be hard for Vincent not to pull off one or two.
Right.
Because for the last years, it has been Nathan, Vincent, Jason, Nathan, Jason, Vincent, Nathan, Vincent, Jason, Nathan, Jason, Vincent, It reminds us of like Evan, Johnny, and Jeremy, Evan, Johnny, and Jeremy, Johnny, Evan, Jeremy, Johnny, right? Like it's like,
right.
It's going to be really hard to kind of break that. And I think US figure skating is going to likely go in that direction, but they fall into kryptonite. However, given this situation, and now you have Jason Brown, who did very well at a Worlds and helped us get 3 spots when Vincent so bombed so spectacularly, the politics to kick Jason off of a team, Jason Brown, who everyone wants to go give a hug to, and maybe like cure children with cancer. I don't think that you're gonna knock him off of a team. I'm sorry. It's not gonna happen. Adam's personality absolutely helped him get on that Olympic team. In addition to many other things. In
addition to him having made the Grand Prix final that year. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, there was so many other
I also really disagree with Arashev about Mariah Bell. I think that Mariah Bell has traditionally done really well when she's pissed off. And I think that she has something to prove now that she was not in this conversation. And I would look at her as someone, look, Adam's going to be coaching her at the boards next year and getting her ready, and let's have our moment. And Adam pulled off after a tough season to make the Olympics. I don't think it's over for Mariah Bell. I do think that she needs to get really invigorated and figure out whatever was her problem this year.
But what I will say, and we sort of talked about this after nationals, was how floored I was at the amount of growth Alyssa Liu had from a disastrous fall to nationals. That was a staggering amount of improvement, albeit a drop in the ocean of what she's trying to actually achieve. But I think in all this meantime, I'm very curious to see how much she's been progressing, if it's this team or if things have started to settle a little bit and she feels I don't know. I'm really intrigued to see what she can come up with, because again, I was shocked at nationals that she was able to do what she did. And it made me seem like her potential to improve is greater than I thought.
She needs to improve that much again. So
but she kind of proved that she could, maybe. That it gave me more of an idea that she might be able to do it, where in the fall I had all but just crossed her name off altogether in my head.
Yeah. You're right, you know, and that's I look at Amber Glenn. She's on a rise. Although I think for Amber Glenn, it can go two ways. You can gain strength from being in the rink with another team that is pushing to make the Olympics and you're kind of driving together. The only situation is that they're also coached by someone else's parents. Are you ever going to get that same amount of attention? You know, without knowing the situation in the rink, that's my concern. But then do you really want to switch something if it's getting better? So
right.
Who knows?
Right.
Like,
yeah. Also, just on a side note about the men, with Kolyada and Semenenko, they did qualify for 3 Russian men.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be very intriguing to me also.
They have to go to number 1 too. So
yeah, who will go for the Russian men?
That's a great shot.
I would think so too. Yeah.
I don't know Danielian, how much is he skating? I know he's been working his way back. He's not skating in this. You haven't seen the Instagram clips, which is like the way we see everything.
Right. But
the way we see Kosternaya dancing, but we don't see Kosternaya jump.
Right, exactly.
He's pressing at the trainings. And then I'm like, girls, were we supposed to like, what's your take on the Atari dancing videos while that was away? We've never seen them dancing on the ice before. Was that because we're gonna get more attention at the Worlds and we don't want Sambo 70 to be called toxic and like caustic? Was this just
it was a very joyous post, wasn't it? It was
a very joyous post from a account that is very planned and strategic. So I was like, oh, they are playing chess in like 7 different ways here, but we're also seeing that Kosternaya is thriving and she's having fun and I think they're trying to ease the bad press for next year. I think that they're playing in advance, okay? That they're
yes, I agree.
But this is not the Karoli Ranch of Moscow that we are, you know, not ripping the souls out of people and eating them and like, I think this is
nurturing champions. Yeah.
You know what? Good to see that these girls are human and young and vibrant and it sells tickets for their show. So coming up,
yeah, absolutely.
Is skating. Is she gonna do the old Billie Eilish program? Like, it's all been forgiven. Like, what has happened?
Right.
Anna Shcherbakova.
Were you surprised she went for the quad? I mean, it's in her nature, right? Like, I don't think they would ever play it safe, but I thought they were already playing it safe by only including the 1 quad. But it seemed like every attempt she crashed on in practice.
She's gotten more ill the longer she's been away from COVID. That's like this strange thing, and has deteriorated from 2 quads to 1 quad to sitting it down to knowing you're going to sit it down. I think she's a fighter. I think she's got a lovely internal character and response to music. I know that Kosternaya has always had the skating skills. I've always seen Anna as like sensitive and strong-willed. I relate to her in many ways. I don't think she's the most talented. I don't think she's the best at anything, but I think she's good across the board in different things. What
did Scott used to say? Did he say that about like Chris? Her strength
greatest strength is a lack of weakness, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go into different technique things, and there are weaknesses.
Yeah. But you know,
of course, Galina watched the skating lesson.
Oh.
Div, what did you say about Anna Shcherbakova's foot? Oh, that it's like this? Div, you're giving foot like Anna. Touche, that is something that I work on all the time. So
Okay.
my left ankle is like not so good.
Well, and it was fascinating when someone like Alex then was like, be careful what you fix, because you could be taking something else away. Now, one would think just by merely pointing your toe, you may not be jeopardizing a jump technique. And if you are, perhaps that jump technique wasn't sustainable to begin with. But I forever remember when you talked to Elvis on the show, and he was talking about his camel spin. And when he finally got it parallel to the ice, he could not land a quad toe to save his life. So they were like, we're making the conscious choice to not do the spin.
There is something with that, with the hip mobility. The thing is Tara Lipinski, we were once talking about Jeremy Abbott, and I think Jeremy couldn't do sprint eagles, if I'm remembering correctly. With all the beautiful things that Jeremy could do, I don't think he was like a Brian Boitano sprint eagle skater. I may be wrong, but I feel like Jeremy's someone that I talked about this with once, like 12 years ago. And Tara told me, she goes, I'm not a sprint eagle person either. And I remember she said that she didn't work on it because she didn't want to affect the snap of her triples.
Something about the opening of the hips.
Opening of the hips, you would lose. Remember how Mao didn't have that snap and would have the under rotation problem like Murai, but then someone like Tara is tighter, and that's one of the ways that you're able to get around. So I just thought it was interesting. That's where my with Alex.
Okay, yeah.
So Sherbachova, I felt like she peaked career-wise at nationals. Would love to be wrong. However, over the last years, she's gotten taller and taller, and the consistency has waned, and to where we've seen her, like it has taken a Herculean effort to get to where. Looking at the girls coming up behind her in Russia, she's not who I would bet on for the Olympic champion. And I think that there is a real sadness to that. That's also sport nowadays, but it's also what's happened to the sport. And some of that is components. But then when you're talking about who could beat her, and Kamila Valieva might be a better component skater. So then you're like, that's life. There is a real sadness to it, that to see people, big other discussion, but like that is just the reality. And I mean, Tuktamisheva, yes, it's a very strong person who has come back, did well here. I think she's kept herself in the conversation.
But it's so much more of a feel-good story than maybe a beautiful skating story. Like I don't know where this puts her for now. Even her in her interview that she gave shortly after nationals, I think she was like, I don't see anybody making the team unless you have at least a quad and a triple axel. I mean, I think she's aware of the requirements on her.
Although she's like, Daria, I don't see you having one.
Exactly. Unless she's at home, not at Worlds, acquiring one.
We haven't seen it on the Team Two Breeds Instagram yet.
Yeah.
I think she'll get higher components next season, but I don't know if she's going to have look, it's going to take it in Russia. That's why I was wondering, would it be smart for Trusova to go back? What is Trusova going to do? She had no choreography in that free. It has been stripped of everything throughout the season, to where we were attempting it at the beginning. Remember, she had that move. She had like a cross behind, and we really
you saw some efforts being made. And there were, I mean, yes, I agree. Her PCS was probably way too high in the short. Correct. But in an event where a lot of weird things were happening in the performances, like the fact that Tuktamisheva just like completed a clean short program, probably boosted those numbers, whether that's correct or not. But I think in the beginning of the season, we saw Trusova doing it. And then at the end of the day, it's like, screw it. I'll get the marks regardless. I've just got to try to put out this content. And again,
she doesn't. That's the thing.
I know it wasn't a Nathan story. This wasn't a story about technical content winning. This was a story about failed technical content winning.
All of a sudden, the Russian Federation helped her so much when Plushenko has been saying all year that the Russian Federation hasn't. And then he was talking about Kosternaya owing money all the time. And then now we never hear about that anymore. And I'm just saying that I have, if I had to write
You're just asking questions.
Asking questions. Okay. Someone that was like, oh, and you know what? I'm asking questions based on his own words.
True. I don't think she's going anywhere.
Listen, if that girl did 2 quad toes and a quad salchow that was landed and did them in like consistently throughout the year, she would probably be the world champion right now.
Yeah.
But she
If your
sits on the
problem is
ice.
that you're over rotating your quad sow, you probably can just like play it safe.
No, she did have an ankle injury, but when she skates, she is not bending her ankles or her knees often. She had that quality of being above the ice, which is not so good for consistency. I'm interested to see what happens to her, because I think that if someone tamed her and sat her down and was like, you need to get consistent because this is the name of the game. You need to do enough so that you're ahead, but that you're consistent. Because the thing is that her quad toe could be money.
Yeah.
And she was sitting it down here. And I know
Right.
she's had injuries, but she was also trying to like up the element and then change from practice to practice and no consistency. And I think it just was.
But if you're her, are you going to learn that lesson? Because you just kind of were reconfirmed that you can do whatever you want and still win the free at Worlds.
I mean, she should be embarrassed to lose to Shcherbakova.
Yeah.
And I mean it in the sense, Shcherbakova has no quads. She was the 3rd ranked Russian.
But she landed a combo in the short. I mean,
Right, but I don't think that Trusova, she got a medal, but she really didn't skate that great here, okay?
No.
People are gonna look back at this and say, you're underachieving on your talent. And how Elena said about the Russian Federation and the money, like I would look at her and be like, you've been a mess. We have no idea which quad you're going to put out, which one you're going to land. I've seen no consistency throughout the season. Am I going to trust you to go to the Olympics? She could have been off the podium easily here in an event that was judged more soundly, and Kaori Sakamoto could have had that medal, or Karen Chen could have had that medal, depending on how you make a couple of calls and a couple of rotations and edge calls.
Did you feel like Kaori kind of got the shaft here?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, people were talking about Karen getting the shaft, and like, listen, Karen's a lovely skater. She's one of the most throwback, old school, beautiful skaters
They both got
in
the
that field. But Kaori also, I was like, I don't know, that was
Karen has an ability. So the Worlds that Karen has been 4th. It's so funny. She has done a great job, and the Team USA completely relied on her. But if you like look at it in the big picture, 2016 was a World Championships where everyone skated well. Everyone in that final group. Karen Chen does well at Worlds when Pogorilaya is like falling and having some very scary moments, and other skaters are imploding, and Ashley's leaving out content. She just has this way of showing up and doing her thing and having
the right time. Yeah.
But you know what? JC Brown has made a career of that as well. And that's the thing about having good spins and good footwork and good programs. And if they rewarded components appropriately, Karen would be a medalist. And if they weighted it more. And
But what if they called all the under rotations? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
she also
it
got
works
some
both
help.
ways. If they called the under rotations, yes. Because Karen, I don't think that her combo in the short was huge. It was not rotated, all right? In my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
She was wonderful. I had a moment. I loved it. I'd give her all the components, but I don't think it was rotated. But there were a lot of other calls at these Worlds that were very suspect, okay?
Right.
The biggest one, Yelim Kim, could have so easily been a medalist here and has improved so much. And I really do believe that the Korean...
And the judges were along for the ride, I think. They really rewarded that combo in the short. They were...
Not as much as they could have.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I would have taken my top off for it and just... I mean,
defend that in the judges meeting. Yeah, okay.
It
was worth it. Yeah, exactly.
See that combo? Did it bring you back to Kim Yuna? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tom Jones. Okay.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that was unfortunate, that free. That was tough.
Yeah. So, learning experience. I mean, I don't think she'll make that kind of a program again, but hey, she's no longer the boring skater. You're now like, now she's got power. She's got ups and downs. We don't know what's going to happen. Okay. She went from being a Sotskova to be like, oh.
Yeah, it's true. It really is true.
Yeah. High and Lee switching back and forth in programs, probably not helping her. She was lovely here, but.
Yeah, but again, like you say, and of course we saw this with Junhwa Cha also, who seemed so promising in the short, but again, they all looked tired by the time they got to the free. And I know we mentioned it, but for the whole team took a hit, I think.
Also, the Koyada costume situation. Why
Here's action? Yeah, I didn't mind the gray. I thought the blue was prettier and a little. I don't know if this had more of like a balletic nod to like a certain reference I wasn't catching. It showed his line lovely. I thought the other one was beautiful, so I didn't
get
really
a new short program.
Yes, please.
Interesting that they had all the talk about him putting in the quads and then he didn't, and we didn't really see them in practice. Although the practice feeds were not as good here as they could have been for everyone. And I don't understand why. You're building interest in a sport. You're only giving the practices to the media. Why wouldn't you stream that to the world?
Right.
And the ISU
at a place where you can attend, you know.
And yeah, the ISU has made so many strides. Think about how much more momentum that is in the algorithm. They're more likely to recommend you to other people, ISU. I think that was a miscalculation. But
yeah. Although not a miscalculation was having Mark Hanready instead of that idiot equestrian man that would be like, you know, commentating for people who could not see. He was like, she's wearing a red dress. She's taking center ice. Yeah, we got it. We got that part.
Mark got a gold medal for these.
Yeah. Please show us how to look at that twizzle skid in the slow-mo. That is far more interesting.
A little bit Ted during the free dance, which I think he's actually just a skating nerd and was getting super excited, but he is also a very opinionated, but he was definitely holding it back. He did a very good job.
And I think sometimes in your own discipline, like I'll do this with my own voice type if I'm judging. Some people get harsher in that, and some people become kinder and more empathetic to what they're doing.
He's definitely a ham. I mean, oh, come on. He's taking the pictures, doing the splits. And
yeah. I think you get that publicity.
I think he got himself a job. You know what?
I hope so. Because again, having someone that at least knows the sport, for goodness sakes, like that was so insulting for a while there with that equestrian guy. So I lost.
And no Ted. It was good. It was really good. I felt good. I felt good about it.
Yeah.
I wrote to him, Mark, praise the Terry. It's the way to go. It's the way to go.
Just ask Ted. Look at Ted.
Praise the Terry.
They will give you the world. They will give you the world.
Talk about how beautiful she looks. Okay. She was like, oh, we won. Although, biggest flop of the event, Boikova.
I didn't want to say this in front of Elena, but see, it's interesting. I've always painted Boikova based on nothing except my own guessing and weird fake armchair psychology. I think she may not be the most naturally gifted, but she works really hard. This is what I've decided for her. And she kind of has this like rolled up shoulder situation that
that's horrific posture.
Yeah, but it's something in the shoulders themselves. And I thought, you know, that's something.
It needs the back pod, which you can scroll down to get. It's done wonders.
In lime green. Here's the thing, like, I thought maybe she was just being self-deprecating, but I have to rely on Russian speakers because if I had lost a competition, but then my teacher had another student that won, I'd be like, well, I'm glad you won, I guess. Like, I would be so disappointed in myself. So I'm trying to have empathy. Like, it was right after the thing happened. That has got to be so tough.
She also called her a term like that means you're from the burbs, like just.
Yeah, see, like that kind of stuff I didn't obviously.
That wasn't public, but that was behind the scenes. But, and there's also, remember earlier in the season when they won an event?
And he was so arrogant in his celebrating.
Like, get in line and the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunate.
Eyes on that situation. Listen, I'm sure the air event's so interesting.
It's true.
You're for it.
Yeah.
But I loved, she's so rude. And Moscovita goes, spasiba.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you guys used to respond to comments with namaste. So.
Or Jenny would go, I hope you're having a great night.
It's clear they weren't, if she
Which
felt the
means
need
you
to
are
say that.
flipping off your chain.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy.
Or when
have
I
you
go,
talked to Alexa? Yeah, exactly. See you next week. Have you talked to Alexa?
I sent Alexa a message, yes.
Okay. Because she wrote a blurb that was also kind of jabbing at herself, which
she wants to do well.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the whole world seems in different facets. Everyone seems on board with it. Like, yeah, we'll get behind this team, no problem.
Well, they have athleticism.
Yeah.
They need to find the right piece of music. They're not a romantic team. They cannot do that. She skated with her husband who coaches them. Right. So they need to find music that people love and relate to.
Yeah.
They need something like fun and...
But again, it wasn't the packaging that held them back here.
You know, the We Are the Champions thing, I think would be a good vehicle for them going forward. Like that kind of, not that music, but you know, that kind of a rock.
The sentiment of like, let's get it. Yeah.
Yes.
Or like their Metallica when it was Alexa and Chris.
Right, doesn't Brandon kind of remind you of a guy that was in like a bad high school garage band? Like, I don't know, like I just can like see it. Like him in flannel and like some chucks.
Amazing.
You can so see it, Jonathan. You can
I know I can. Yeah. Especially when you mentioned the chucks.
A Misfits t-shirt that hasn't been washed in 4 days. Like, yes. Okay.
The holes over here. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Know it. Okay.
Yeah.
What's he doing in figure skating? Not pointing his toe. So, I mean.
Amazing. I mean, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them. I mean, because again, she was fine in the short and he doubled. And then, you know, she had her issues in the.
You know what? I think, like I said, they need to go to sports psychologists together. Find the good piece of music. And you overcome adversity. It's better in a way than if people always say that like the second year is the hardest for pairs, or there's a sophomore slump, but if you could use your first, you know, like we didn't achieve this and let's work on this, I think they've got a lot of potential. Look,
and this is
what higher, right?
Yeah. But this is what we sort of said with Elena also, because this wasn't a normal debut season. This was still very much a season where they were able to train a lot.
What did Elena say to Tamara Mosfina to get yelled at in the car like that? I mean, do you just want to?
Oh, I know. But my favorite was also when she was basically telling us that they were like forcing romantic connections with some of the pairs growing up. She was like, you know, it wasn't romantic, but we all ended up married because they would like force them to spend so much time together off the ice. Yeah, exactly. Notice you left that part off. I adored her. She was great. But
yeah, but there was like a strategy of like two people of certain success marrying in the Soviet Union. It's also strategic with the apartment situation that they used to get. There's like
interesting
things on that too. Okay.
Yeah. Fascinating. I see, and I didn't know what her relationship was currently with Dennis.
Listen, Galina made sure that her daughter married an Olympic champion. I am just saying that these people are operators. Okay.
Amazing. I mean, I want to hear from Dennis, because wasn't he living in China with Chen Lu, who we married then?
He does live in China with Chen Lu, yes.
And I was like, why aren't they coaching people?
They do coach people that I don't think that they are.
Because their daughter was skating.
Yes, but like Chen Lu was tall and Dennis was a pair boy tall. I don't think she has like the natural genetics. But I think that they do coach. I believe he coaches and helps out Genrik Strutinsky, who's there.
Okay.
So I hear this all from the Russians.
So like, I was like, I'm impressed. Yeah, I've been trying to find the information and haven't, but okay.
You have to come to Igor Lukanin's edge class, okay? He would be like,
just saying.
Yes. Also, Igor insulted my red tights the other day. He claims he didn't insult them. And then I was like, well, do you like them? They've no. And then he goes, you're very sensitive about your red pants.
But it's no wonder certain people think other people are sensitive when they have this like gruff demeanor to them. It's like, yeah.
He's just monotone. He's not.
Okay.
I'm not grumpy. Oh no, not you, Igor. You're not.
Amazing. Inflection tells me that you are. So.
He's doing great. Let's.
Okay.
And then in the pairs, otherwise, KMT, they need to find a better piece from next. Maybe they could even bring back a free.
That scary lift moment, we sort of like breezed by that too.
Also,
Which we
lifts were not it here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is going on with? But they did okay overall. But
yeah,
they had. You know what? They improved in many areas here at the Worlds. But
wait, so now did the Japanese team? Pair team end up in the top 10?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, but they don't have.
I thought so.
So we'll just put Satsuko in the pairs. Maybe
I know, it broke my heart. Still looking so beautiful with the Tosca opening, and the Tosca aria is "I live for art," and then she's living for art because she's definitely not living for athletics. I was like, oh, this is so much for my heart.
She like trying to go for the rotation, and that's why she was falling on some of them, and then she got tight, and then it was.
I know it was a tough watch. It was a tough watch, but
I would like Ari Zakarian and Averbrook to put on to put on professional events. Satsuko can go and do like double axels and just skate pretty, and just do a layback.
For real, it is one of the few people that it is enough. It is enough for me.
Listen.
Or put her in a pair team and she'll rotate from here to the high heavens.
They used to invite Roz to the Pro-Ams to finish last, but skate beautifully.
Yeah. With that
Ari
black
Russia
sequence in the blue. Yeah.
And if you just let Satsuko skate, we'll all tune in on your YouTube feed. You'll get that ad rev, and we'll just like watch and be very happy.
Enjoy. Yeah, it's
Okay?
true. It's true.
Make it happen.
Incredible. What about dance for you now that, I mean, I love talking to Renee.
All about
like,
Fear and Gibson.
I think so too. And you're just thinking like,
It was my least favorite free dance final, like maybe ever.
I know it was a tough one.
It
was uninspired. And I was sort of glad, in this way I was happy in an Oscars type moment that Piper and Paul, I've enjoyed their skating for so many years, and they have been unappreciated or underappreciated. So I'm thrilled that they got this medal and placed so high. But I have to be, if I'm being totally honest, I don't really understand what everyone else must see in the free dance. It's lovely. It doesn't touch me the way I've been touched by other ones.
The people that like Piper and Paul are the people that are going to watch Grey's Anatomy and cry. Okay.
I don't do that, but I have loved Piper and Paul's programs. I liked starting
Broadway now. You can watch Grey's Anatomy. It's okay. You're not with like their fashion.
But do they sing? Do they sing on Grey's Anatomy?
Only in one episode because Sada Ramirez is like a Tony Award winner, right?
Well, did you know I saw her back in the day when she was in Spamalot?
So jealous. Okay, so jealous.
It was when they did the test run in Chicago. Yeah, it was amazing. She was great.
Listen, she's amazing.
Yeah,
so,
she was amazing in the show. Yeah,
incredible. I actually went to see Spamalot because I was so obsessed with her watching Grey's Anatomy when I was in college, and then I saw The Replacement. She was really terrible, and it was just like, you're not Sarah.
Not the same. Yeah, because I
don't like Monty Python humor. To sit through that and not even like.
Oh, really? I do a lot. But it was also like Tim Curry was in that, and David Hyde Pierce was in. It was like kind of an all-star cast. I saw it was
Replacements, and it was not the same.
Okay.
Some ginger trying to be Sada Ramirez.
The B cast. Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
Otherwise, yeah, I'm like the ice dance. It was all about Fear and Gibson. Okay, doing that Madonna program. And
you think Russia's going to pull this off, where they try to clobber over the French?
No, I think that we've now all missed the French, and we're like, wait, the Russians actually won the Worlds.
I think this is, and again,
what's your reaction when they won? Ew. Inevitable.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Because I thought like his facial expressions during the free dance were almost psychotic. They were like this like faux, like pizzazzy. And again, that's such sensitive music.
Being angry. They have all their great angry composers like Shostakovich and like clanging piano. Like Prelude in C sharp minor by Rachmaninoff. The bells of Moscow would be perfect for them.
Didn't Karolina Kostner do Shostakovich at one point?
Probably. I mean, she could do nothing wrong. Like,
I know. I mean, you've got that music. Like, go for it. And that's not nationalism. That's just good music to be skating to. Yeah.
Well,
so.
Also, I love Butterfly Lovers. Okay.
I do too.
Listen, why are we trusting Alex about that? He gave Gracie Gold Life is Beautiful, which I think she thought she was in a Christmas pageant doing that set. I don't think she saw it. And then, he allowed that the Griegs piece that sounded like the scratching violins that Frank said.
The Gershwin.
Yes,
the high violin.
The Gershwin. Yes.
Yeah.
He allowed that to happen. I'm just saying that was on his watch.
Yeah. Okay.
And the USFS pulled her out of there. Okay.
Yeah.
That is the rumor. Okay.
And then replaced it with the gorgeous Grieg.
And Frank. Okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Mr. Ratchev. Okay.
Yeah. Amazing. So what were like your top moments? Give me your top moment.
The way that Lila and Liam, the way that Lila and Lewis were, when she found the camera before their choreographic step to the ending, was like such a moment. She was milking it with all of her sass. Nathan, Jason's personal victory, Tuktamishaba and Yuma crying, and his joy and his performance, like the first half of his free show, doing that choreography step sequence, but him.
I like Kevin's step sequence too, in the same way. I kind of
yes,
yeah.
Mishna Galyamov, they had a moment. Sui and Han, like once they got past the jumps in that free skate, it was so fantastic, but it was just not.
It just felt good to be sort of watching skating in this way again, where international skaters with great cameras, like what a difference that made, because we've been watching so many sort of makeshift things. So it just.
Scottish accent, British accents make things better. From the UK, they really just do.
Yeah.
Even if I don't agree with what you're saying, or I think you're being a little
It seems educated. Yeah.
Sounds great. Okay.
Yeah.
When he was like, Madison Chalk has won awards for this costume. I'm like, awards plural? I mean, it deserves awards plural, but I think
exactly.
one award show.
Well, and I thought her rhythm dance dress looked like a Jane Torval glow up from the 94 free. In a good way.
She looks like $1 million. Okay.
Yeah. Literally expensive. She looked expensive.
How about you? What was your?
I think the Jason short, but I'm going to go sentimental. I mean, yes, the men's field in general. I thought it was so exciting to see just such individuality going on. But I'm going to go with the sentimental silver medal moments for Yuma and Elizaveta. Those responses in the kiss and cry that were so honest and real. The joy and the shock and the gratitude and all this sort of stuff. It was pretty amazing.
And I think our therapy session with Queen Elena Bechke, I mean, what the Aliona of her day. Okay, she is
true.
Tense. Okay,
except Aliona would have stayed in no matter what her coach said. There's the difference. But
Tamara wouldn't coach her anymore. She wouldn't put up with Elena's nerves anymore. Okay.
And what's she gonna do? Coach with someone in America? So that was one of my favorite.
Who are you going to go to? No one. You're with Tamara Moskvina. Word.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
Holden Edge looks sexy, everyone.